Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for more Southwest pioneer stories. Please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. For new videos, hit the notification bell. Relax and enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Southwest Desert. Today we're diving into the fascinating history of Goldfield, Nevada, once known as the Queen of the Camps. This is a tale of sudden wealth, audacious theft, and the boom and bust cycle that defined so many mining towns in the early 20th century. Our story begins in the fall of 1903, about 20 miles south of the newly established camp of Tonopah, Nevada. Picture a lone tent pitched at the base of Columbia Mountain, battered by howling winds and swirling sand. This was the humble beginning of what would soon become one of the richest gold mining towns in American history. The tent belonged to Harry C. Stimler, a 22-year-old prospector of half-Cherokee descent. Stimler had missed his chance to strike it rich in nearby Tonopah, discovered just 3 years earlier. Drowning in debt and armed with only a grubstake from Tonopah's founder, Jim Butler, and another investor named Kendall, Stimler was down to his last shot at fortune. As fate would have it, the fierce windstorm that nearly blew away Stimler's tent also revealed his ticket to riches. When the dust settled and the sun rose on that autumn morning, Stimler found himself camped almost directly on top of a rich ore deposit. In a nod to the tempestuous weather that led to his discovery, he named his first claim Sandstorm. Shortly after, he staked a second claim called January. These two claims would become the foundation of Goldfield, a name that would soon be on the lips of fortune seekers across the nation. News of Stimler's discovery spread like wildfire. Hard rock miners from Idaho, Montana, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah began pouring into the area. They were joined by prospectors, speculators, and dreamers from all walks of life, each hoping to carve out their own piece of the golden pie. On October 20th, 1903, a group of 17 men gathered on the main street of the fledgling camp. Perched atop a pile of lumber, they discussed the organization of a proper mining district. Among them were characters with colorful names like Doc O'Toole, Johnny Jones, and Doc White Wolf. But it was the youngest of the group, Claude M. Smith, who would play a pivotal role in the town's founding. When the group needed someone to serve as the official claim recorder, they turned to Smith. Despite his protests of inexperience, the others insisted. "Hell, you can't," one of them exclaimed. "You can read and write, can't you? We'll tell you what to do. You're elected." Reluctantly, Smith accepted the position. His first act was to suggest a name for the new camp, Goldfields. The group approved, though the final S was later dropped, and Goldfield was officially born. For the first couple of years, development in Goldfield was slow. Some early speculators grew restless as veins seemed to pinch out or disappear entirely. But those who kept the faith were soon rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. The turning point came with the discovery of the Mohawk Mine. Its ore was so rich that it catapulted Goldfield from a struggling camp to a boomtown virtually overnight. By 1907, just 4 years after its founding, Goldfield boasted a population of 15,000 and had produced the staggering sum of $45 million in gold, equivalent to well over $1 billion today. In its heyday, Goldfield was home to some of the richest mines in the world. The Mohawk, Jumbo, Red Top, Combination, Florence, and others produced ore of almost unbelievable quality. Some veins assayed as high as $20,000 per ton, and in 1908, one particularly rich vein yielded ore worth $76,000 per ton. A local poet, J.W. Scott, captured the town's newfound glory in verse. "Splendid, magnificent queen of the camps, mistress of countless Aladdin's lamps, deity worshipped by kings and tramps. The lure she is of the West. But with great wealth came great temptation. As Goldfield's mines began producing riches beyond belief, they became targets for a practice known as high grading. High grading was a form of theft where miners would smuggle out small amounts of the richest ore, often called picture rock or jewelry rock because of its visible seams of pure gold. What started as opportunistic pilfering soon grew into an organized, large-scale operation that would cost mine owners millions. Miners working for $4 or $5 a day would sometimes leave their shifts with as much as $50 worth of rich ore concealed in specially designed pockets in their clothing. Over time, it's estimated that millions of dollars worth of gold was stolen in this manner. At first, the mine owners and lessees paid little attention to high grading. They were too busy skimming the richest deposits themselves, often bypassing lower-grade ore in favor of the most profitable veins. But as the practice grew more widespread and brazen, they could no longer ignore its impact on their bottom line. By 1907, the mine owners had had enough. They began implementing measures to crack down on the thieves in their midst. One of their first moves was to install changing rooms where miners were required to change clothes as they entered and left the mines. This innovation was met with fierce resistance from the miners. It interfered with their lucrative side business of smuggling out rich ore. The Western Federation of Miners, the powerful union representing the workers, protested vehemently against these new security measures. The Mine Owners Association didn't mince words in their assessment of the situation. In a statement issued on December 9, 1907, they accused the union of encouraging, protecting, and assisting its members in stealing ore from the mines. They claimed that in just 6 months, over $1 million worth of ore had been stolen from the Mohawk mine alone. As tensions escalated, law enforcement began cracking down on high graders and their accomplices. Raids were conducted both in the mines and on the premises of assayers suspected of processing stolen ore. One of the most dramatic incidents occurred on December 10, 1907, when 5 miners were arrested at gunpoint on the 300-foot level of the Rogers Syndicate lease. 3 of the men were caught red-handed with 100 pounds of choice specimens valued at $20 a pound, a small fortune at the time. But the miners weren't the only ones profiting from high grading. Many assayers in Goldfield were complicit in the scheme, providing a crucial service by processing and selling the stolen ore. It was estimated that at least 90% of the assaying firms in Goldfield were dealing illicitly in high-grade ore. Law enforcement began targeting these operations as well. On December 17, 1907, a raid was conducted on an assayer's premises at 618 Fifth Avenue North. The setup was elaborate, with electric bell systems to warn of approaching strangers and a peephole in the door. The assayer was allegedly caught in the act of reducing stolen ore. Another assayer, George Richardson, was arrested for receiving stolen ore. He was said to have been caught previously in Pueblo, Colorado, with $16,000 worth of specimens from Goldfield's Mohawk mine in his possession. Despite the efforts to curb high grading, the practice continued to drain wealth from Goldfield's mines. This, combined with the depletion of the richest ore deposits and labor unrest, led to a gradual decline in the town's fortunes. The involvement of radical labor organizers like Big Bill Haywood of the Industrial Workers of the World, also known as the Wobblies, further complicated matters. Haywood moved into Goldfield to direct strike tactics and keep the miners in a constant state of agitation. As production declined and costs rose, many of the mines became unprofitable. The boom that had seemed endless just a few years earlier began to sputter and fade. Today, Goldfield stands as a shadow of its former self. It dreams in the shadow of Columbia Mountain, much as it did when Harry Stimler first pitched his tent there over a century ago. The story of Goldfield is more than just a tale of a mining boomtown. It's a microcosm of the American West at the turn of the 20th century, a place where fortunes could be made or lost overnight, where law and order were often tenuous concepts, and where the promise of untold riches drew people from all walks of life. It's a reminder of the impermanence of wealth and the enduring allure of gold. From the initial discovery by Harry Stimler to the height of the boom and the gradual decline, Goldfield's history is filled with colorful characters, audacious schemes, and the timeless struggle between labor and capital. As we look back on Goldfield's heyday, we're left to wonder what other riches might still lie buried beneath the Nevada desert, and will Goldfield ever reclaim its crown as the queen of the camps? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: the legacy of Goldfield, with all its glitter and grit, will continue to captivate us for generations to come. This has been another episode of the Southwest Desert. Thank you for listening, and join us next time as we uncover more hidden gems from America's Gold Rush era. Welcome to Southwest Desert, where we explore the forgotten stories of the American Southwest. Today, we're journeying deep into Nevada's mining history to uncover the remarkable and tragic tale of Delamar, a gold mining boomtown that earned the ominous nickname the Mankiller. This is a story of ambition, prosperity, and the terrible price paid in the pursuit of golden dreams. Even today, a century after its abandonment, dust devils still dance across the tailing dumps of Delamar, stirring up the deadly silica dust that gave this prosperous mining camp its grim reputation. Our window into this fascinating chapter of Western history comes through the vivid memories of Frank and Violet Pace, who lived through Delamar's glory days and witnessed its eventual decline. The story of Delamar begins in 1892 with the initial gold strike. Like many Western mining towns, Delamar's transformation from empty desert to bustling city happened almost overnight. Within just a year, the promising claims caught the attention of Captain John Delamar, a prominent mining promoter and developer of the era. Seeing the potential in these golden hills, the captain purchased several leading claims for the princely sum of $150,000, an enormous investment for the 1890s. The town that grew around these mines took an Americanized version of the captain's French name, and Delamar was born. In a fascinating display of frontier resourcefulness, many of the town's first inhabitants came from nearby Pioche, bringing their community with them quite literally. Entire buildings were transported intact from the older settlement, creating an instant town in the Nevada desert. In 1895, Captain Delamar made what seemed like a significant technological advancement, installing a barrel chlorination plant. At its heart were 13 Griffin mills, impressive machinery designed to crush and process the ore. But this modern marvel would prove to be a double-edged sword, unleashing a silent killer that would haunt the town for generations. The dry crushing process released clouds of Cambrian quartzite dust, a substance containing more than 80% silica. The air became so thick with this invisible menace that even those who never set foot in the mines or mills weren't safe from its deadly effects. Frank Pace, who witnessed the human toll firsthand, described the horror with stark clarity. Most of the work was done by farm boys who came over from the Mormon settlements in southwestern Utah. These young men had never even heard of silicosis, but after just 3 or 4 months in the mines and mill at Delamar, they would start coughing. Some died within weeks, while others lingered for years, too sick to work, too stubborn to die. The tragedy of Delamar's dust wasn't confined to the miners. Women and children, who never ventured near the mines or mills, occasionally contracted silicosis just from breathing the town's air. The dust was so pervasive that even the horses weren't spared, eventually succumbing to the same respiratory ailments that plagued their human masters. It wasn't until 1900 that some measure of relief arrived when Simon Bamberger of Salt Lake City purchased the Delamar property. Recognizing the deadly toll of the dry processing method, Bamberger implemented two significant changes. First, he piped water from Meadow Valley across the range. Then, he transformed the milling process, switching from the deadly chlorination method to a new cyanide process. While this wet milling technique reduced the dust somewhat, Frank Pace's assessment was still grim. It was still terrible. But Delamar wasn't defined solely by tragedy. Through Violate Pace's memories, we see a vibrant, thriving community determined to build a life worth living in the shadow of the mines. Violate arrived as a young schoolgirl from Panica, a small Mormon town about 40 miles away. She was one of 14 children, and after losing both parents in their early 40s, the younger children had to fend for themselves. The promise of work drew them to Delamar, where miners could earn an almost unbelievable $3 a day. For Violet, leaving her small hometown for the booming mining camp was an adventure beyond her wildest dreams. Her first glimpse of Delamar left an impression that would last a lifetime. It was long after dark when we caught our first sight of town. All this flat was covered with homes and shops, and the whole place was ablaze with bright lights. I thought I had never seen anything so beautiful or wonderful in my whole life. And then, when I saw the fine big stores all filled with gorgeous dresses and hats and hair ribbons and jewelry, I simply had to pinch myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. At its peak, Delamar was the largest city in southern Nevada, boasting a rich cultural life that rivaled any frontier town. The crown jewel was Max Schaefer's Grand Opera House, a magnificent $10,000 structure considered the finest theater in southern Nevada. The Atkins Orchestra played for dances almost every week. The town band gave free concerts, and traveling show companies regularly performed at the Opera House. The only significant hardship of daily life was the constant struggle for water. Even after Bamberger's pipeline brought water from Meadow Valley, it still had to be hauled from the pipeline's end to individual houses, costing residents 50 cents per barrel. But on May 29, 1900, disaster struck the thriving community. Late in the afternoon, a fire broke out in a lean-to attached to Edward's saloon. The hot, dry conditions had turned the town into a tinderbox, and within moments, the flames spread uncontrollably. Violet witnessed the destruction from her home on Nob Hill, providing us with a vivid eyewitness account of the catastrophe. We were living on Nob Hill at that time and could see all over town from our front porch, she recalled. I can remember how horrified we were as we watched the Schaefer Grand burn to the ground. From there, the fire swept on through Main Street, leveling one business building after another. The whole flat soon was a rolling sea of flame and smoke. The fire department, desperate to contain the inferno, resorted to dynamiting buildings in the fire's path. Though they eventually gained control, most of the business section lay in ruins, and hundreds were left homeless. Armed guards patrolled the streets through the night to prevent looting. This was the Delamar that 15-year-old Frank Pace first encountered when he arrived to work at the Delamar Mercantile Company. His brothers, already established in the mercantile business, had secured him a position with Henry W. Miles. Though he had imagined a Wild West scene with six-shooters popping on every corner and dead men lying in the street, he found instead a town of charcoal and wreckage. But Delamar's spirit wasn't easily broken. Almost before the embers had cooled, the work of rebuilding began. By 1901, Delamar had reclaimed its former glory and stood as Nevada's leading gold producer. The Delamar mill processed around 400 tons of ore daily, generating between $100,000 and $200,000 in bullion each month. The April Fool Mill was also operational, and approximately 400 men worked the mines. However, Delamar's golden age was drawing to a close. The mines were beginning to shut down, and many workers, including the newlywed Paces, left for the new boom in Goldfield. In September 1909, after producing an official total of $25 million in gold, though unofficial estimates ran as high as $80 million, the last mine closed its doors. The town's end was marked by a haunting farewell. The mine and mill whistles were tied down, allowed to blow until the last spark of power faded away. The generators at the Meadow Valley Power Plant fell silent, and Delamar began its long transition into a ghost town. Like many mining towns, Delamar left behind its share of mysteries. Tales persist of buried treasure, specifically, about $70,000 worth of company bullion allegedly hidden by a mine official and an assayer who had been skimming from the company's production. Frank Pace shared that countless treasure hunters had searched the area with doodlebugs and metal detectors and every contrivance under the sun, but the bullion remained lost. One old-timer claimed to know the exact location and repeatedly came close to revealing it to Frank, but took the secret to his grave. Frank himself admitted to having a sneaking idea about the treasure's location, hinting at future prospecting plans with a knowing wink to Violet. After their adventures in other mining camps, including Goldfield and Tonopah, and a brief stint in California where their only son was born, Frank and Violet found their hearts drawn back to Nevada's highland desert. In 1913, they settled in the big house at Caliente, where they remained for 45 years, keeping the memories of Delamar's glory days alive. Today, dust devils still dance across Delamar's tailings, and the foundations of once grand homes still scatter Nob Hill. Where Schaefer's Grand Opera House once stood, where the Atkins Orchestra played, and where thousands once sought their fortunes, only silence remains. The town stands as a powerful reminder of the boom and bust cycle of the American West, where fortunes were made and lives were lost in equal measure. Delamar's story, preserved through the memories of Frank and Violet Pace, serves as a testament to the incredible resilience of those who built the American West and the heavy price many paid for the promise of gold. This has been Southwest Desert. Join us next time as we explore another forgotten chapter of Western history. Welcome, listeners, to today's episode where we'll be diving into the fascinating story of Calico Ghost Town, a slice of the old Southwest frozen in time. We'll explore its rich history, its decline, and the ambitious plans to breathe new life into this Silver Rush relic. So sit back, relax, and let's journey to the heart of the Mojave Desert. Our story begins in the early 1880s, in the rugged Calico Mountains of Southern California. Picture a landscape of jagged, colorful volcanic rocks, where fortune seekers flocked in droves, chasing the glitter of silver. In the spring of 1881, a prospector named Larry Sylvia, along with his companions Charlie Meacham and Johnny McBride, made a discovery that would change the fate of this barren land forever. Their find sparked a rush that would soon transform the area into a bustling boomtown. By July of that year, Calico boasted its first inhabitants, James Parker and Ellie Miller, living in a solitary tent in Wall Street Canyon. But the town wouldn't stay small for long. The real game-changer came with the discovery of the Silver King mine. This mammoth find was credited to Undersheriff Tom Warden and Hughes Thomas, among others. The Silver King would go on to produce a staggering $10 million worth of silver, a fortune that would be worth hundreds of millions in today's money. As news of the strike spread, Calico's population exploded. At its peak, estimates ranged from 800 to 3,500 residents. The once quiet desert was now home to a thriving community of miners, merchants, and dreamers, all hoping to strike it rich in the silver-laden hills. Let's paint a picture of Calico in its heyday. Imagine a bustling main street lined with saloons, shops, and hotels. There was Joe's Saloon, where miners could wet their whistle with sarsaparilla or something stronger. For those looking for a good meal, Young Hen's restaurant was the place to be, and if you needed supplies, Lane's mercantile store had you covered. For entertainment, residents and visitors alike could enjoy dances at Diamond Lil's or catch a show at the Calico Town Hall. Those needing a place to rest their head had options too. There was Mrs. Cook's Pioneer House, boasting tables furnished with the best the market affords, or H.B. Stevens' Calico House, promising accommodations first class in every respect. But life in a boomtown wasn't all glitz and glamour. The desert environment posed significant challenges. Walter Knott, who would later play a crucial role in Calico's story, experienced these hardships firsthand. In the summer of 1915, he worked as a carpenter for a company attempting to process the mine tailings. Knott recalled working in temperatures reaching 116 degrees Fahrenheit, saying, "If you would lay down a hammer, you couldn't pick it up. If you put down any tool, you had to stand it on end to pick it up. It became so hot." Like many boomtowns of the Old West, Calico's fortunes were tied to the very mineral that birthed it. In September 1887, a devastating fire nearly destroyed the town. While Calico rebuilt, this setback, combined with a more insidious threat, would spell the beginning of the end for the thriving community. The real death knell for Calico came with the dramatic fall in silver prices. The value of silver plummeted to between 50 and 60 cents an ounce, less than half of what it had been during the boom years. With mining no longer profitable, Calico's population dwindled. Some diehards remained, eventually moving from the town plateau to the small graveyard below. But for all intents and purposes, Calico had become a ghost town. Fast forward to the late 1930s, when a couple named Larry and Lucille Koch moved into the abandoned town. They initially came to try their luck processing the old mine tailings, but soon became captivated by the town itself. As they excavated and repaired the old structures, they uncovered countless relics from Calico's glory days. Inspired by their finds, the Kochs built a museum to house these treasures, allowing visitors to glimpse into Calico's past. Their efforts, combined with the growing popularity of rock hounding in the mineral-rich Calico Mountains, began to draw more and more visitors to the ghost town. During World War II, Lucille Koch kept the camp and museum open, welcoming thousands of servicemen and women training in the Mojave Desert camps. After the war, the Kochs sold their interest in Calico to desert old-timer Doc Smith and his sister, Irene Wolfe, who continued to maintain the museum. In 1951, Calico's story took another unexpected turn when Walter Knott purchased the town site and surrounding mining claims. Knott, who had briefly worked in Calico during its decline, had gone on to create the famous Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. Knott's vision for Calico was grand and long-term. He planned a 10 to 15-year restoration project, estimated to cost $200,000 or more. His goal wasn't just to preserve the remaining ruins, but to recreate Calico as it was in its 1880s heyday. Under Knott's direction, work began immediately. Debris was cleared, old walls were excavated and strengthened, and paths were improved. A shaft house was constructed at the Maggie Mine, and its tunnel and glory hole were cleared out and lit for tours. The old assay office was even recovered from nearby Yermo and set up again on Calico's main street as a rock shop. Knott's plans for Calico were nothing short of ambitious. He envisioned a town brought back to life, where visitors could step back in time and experience the Old West firsthand. In his dream, Main Street would once again be populated by booted and bearded prospectors, alongside girls in calico dresses. Young Hen's restaurant would serve food once more, and Lane's mercantile store would be stocked with goods. Visitors would be able to enjoy root beer and sarsaparilla at Joe's Saloon, dance at Diamond Lil's, and perhaps catch a show at the Calico Town Hall. For those wanting to stay the night, the Pioneer House and Calico House would offer period-appropriate accommodations. But Knott's vision went beyond mere recreation. He wanted to capture the spirit of Calico, the lusty and swaggering spirit that gave Calico its singular reputation, as he put it. His goal was to portray not just the physical aspects of the town, but the character of the 3,500 human beings who once called it home. Walter Knott's connection to Calico ran deep. His uncle, John C. King, had been an early sheriff of San Bernardino County and had grub-staked the prospectors who discovered the Silver King mine. Knott himself had worked in Calico during its decline, experiencing firsthand the harsh realities of desert life. Knott's own story is a testament to the American dream. From homesteading in the Mojave Desert to creating the world-famous Knott's Berry Farm, his life was one of hard work and perseverance. He saw the restoration of Calico not as a money-making venture, but as a way to give back to the public that had supported his success. In Knott's words, "We have no business playing around with Calico at all. We don't expect to make any money there, and we have all we can do right here. But all of Southern California is filling up so rapidly, from Los Angeles and the South, that I feel in time the desert will become more and more a playground for the people who live here. With future faster transportation, more and more people will be going out there. And since the public has paid us money here and we have made a degree of success, we feel that we owe an obligation to the public, and this is one way of meeting it." As we wrap up our journey through Calico's past and present, we can't help but look to its future. Walter Knott's vision for Calico was a long-term one, spanning 10 to 15 years. His efforts breathed new life into this once-forgotten ghost town. Today, visitors to Calico can explore the restored buildings, tour the Maggie Mine, and get a taste of life in a Silver Rush boomtown. The town serves as a living museum, preserving a crucial piece of American history and the spirit of the Old West. Calico stands as a testament to the boom and bust cycle of mining towns, the perseverance of those who sought their fortunes in the harsh desert landscape, and the dedication of individuals like Walter Knott who worked to preserve our shared history. In present day, we have a Calico fully restored, a place where the past comes alive and new generations can experience the excitement and challenges of life in a 19th century mining town. It's a vision that honors the spirit of the American West and ensures that the story of Calico and the countless other boomtowns like it will never be forgotten. So the next time you find yourself in the Mojave Desert, why not take a detour to Calico? Walk its streets, explore its mines, and immerse yourself in a piece of living history. Who knows? You might just catch a glimpse of the spirit that once made Calico the wonder of the West. And with that, we bring our journey through the past, present, and future of Calico Ghost Town to a close. Until next time, keep exploring, keep discovering, and remember, every ghost town has a story to tell. Welcome to Southwest Desert, the channel that unearths the buried stories of America's Southwest. Today we're delving into the fascinating tale of Belmont, a once thriving silver mining town in Nevada that now stands as a haunting reminder of the boom and bust cycle of the Old West. Picture this: jagged fangs of broken rock buildings rising from the Nevada desert like the set of a post-apocalyptic film, foundations without walls, walls without roofs, chimneys without smoke. Beyond the fallen walls and old buildings lie abandoned mine dumps, forsaken shafts, and silent mills. It's a scene that speaks of forgotten dreams and lost fortunes. As we stand in the old cupola of what was once a bustling town, gazing through its glassless windows at the lonely scene, we can almost hear the echoes of Belmont's turbulent past. The story of this ghost town is like sand pouring through an endless hourglass, a tale of hope, ambition, and ultimately, abandonment. Our story begins in the early 1860s, a momentous and fabulous time in Nevada territory. The discovery of silver on Sun Mountain had sparked a frenzy, sending prospectors far and wide in search of the next big strike. While no second Comstock lode was ever found, this hopeful hegira led to the founding of many great mining camps, Austin, Eureka, Hamilton, and Pioche among them. It was during this time of prosperity and promise that Belmont was born. One day, there were just a few ragged prospectors' tents scattered over the east slope of the Taquimas, with burros grazing along the runoff from a spring. The next day, or so it seemed, 6,000 boomers were milling over that same slope. The transformation was swift and dramatic. Freight teams and heavy wagons churned the dust of newly plotted streets. Claims were staked left and right. Shafts were sunk and tunnels driven. The juniper-grown hills echoed almost around the clock with the sounds of pounding, sawing, and quarrying. Tents gave way to houses of log and stone. Business structures rose from the ground as if by magic. Before Belmont was even 2 years old, it was already casting envious eyes at the Nye County seat, then held by the nearby town of Ione. Early in 1867, over the vigorous and bitter protest of Ione, Nevada's state legislature acceded to Belmont's demands. The county's seat of government was transferred to the upstart town, a move that Belmont's residents saw as a ticket to success and immortality. To mark this momentous occasion, the Silver Bend Reporter, a weekly newspaper, was founded by Oscar L. C. Fairchild and Company. In its very first issue on March 30, 1867, the fledgling news medium boldly predicted that within a year, Belmont would have a population of 10,000 persons. The reporter painted a picture of a town on the brink of unimaginable wealth. Colonel Buell's mill had extracted $100,000 of silver bullion from 1,000 tons of High Bridge ore, all taken from within 25 feet of the surface. With 80 stamps on the road for the Combination and Child and Canfield companies, the newspaper exulted that the bullion yield would exceed $200,000 per month before the summer was over. The excitement only grew from there. By the end of April 1867, a sample of ore from the Combination Company's claim, the High Bridge, had assayed at an astounding $10,247.79 a ton in silver. Colonel Buell himself had left for Paris with a cabinet of Nevada silver to show at the International Exposition. As the silver flowed, so did the development of the town. Clay for brick manufacturing was discovered in abundance 4 miles west of town, and 3 large brick kilns were to be built immediately. Crowell and Myers sawmill was producing 4,000 feet of lumber every 10 hours. New businesses sprang up like wildflowers after a desert rain. H.P. Stimler opened the Belmont News Depot, stocking newspapers from Sacramento and Virginia City, along with cigars and stationery. An oyster house, bakery, 2 physicians, a drugstore, fruit store, and watch repairing shop all joined the bustling Main Street. The reporter even took time to advocate for education, deploring the fact that there had never been a public school in Nye County and urging that Belmont be the first county town to publicly recognize the importance of education. Despite its newfound status as county seat, Belmont didn't immediately get a courthouse befitting its ambitions. Nye's taxpayers, having recently completed a courthouse in Ione, were not eager to fund another so soon. For 7 years, county offices were housed in various leased store buildings around town. It wasn't until 1874 that the contract was awarded for the erection of a massive brick courthouse. The Belmont Courier reported on the progress with pride, noting that by September, joist timbers were on their way from Alpha, a station on the now-defunct Eureka and Palisades Railroad. J.D. Benham, the contractor, had a large force of workmen employed making brick and hauling rock. About 60,000 bricks were already molded and laid up in the kiln, and a kiln of lime had been burned. Upon its completion, the new courthouse was hailed as one of the finest public buildings in the state, a testament to Belmont's prosperity and ambition. But life in a frontier boomtown wasn't all progress and prosperity. Our story takes a darker turn with the tragic lynching of Jack Walker and Charles McIntyre in 1874. To this day, their unmarked graves lie beneath a pinyon pine at the lower edge of town, a somber reminder of frontier justice. Yet, for every tale of violence, there were countless stories of celebration and excitement. The arrival of a long train of freight wagons with merchandise for Belmont stores would set the whole town abuzz. Dances and festivities would light up the night, a stark contrast to the harsh realities of mining life. As the 19th century drew to a close, storm clouds gathered on Belmont's horizon. The demonetization of silver dealt a heavy blow to the town's economy. By the turn of the century, it was clear that Belmont's days as an active camp were numbered. The final nail in the coffin came from an unexpected source. On May 19, 1900, James L. Butler, a Monitor Valley rancher and district attorney of Nye County, made a discovery that would change the course of Nevada's mining history. While prospecting near Tonopah Springs, Butler stumbled upon one of the greatest mining strikes in the state's history. The Tonopah boom that followed proved to be Belmont's undoing. The new strike drained away the old town's last remaining strength. By the general election of 1903, Belmont could muster only 36 qualified electors. The following year, Tonopah succeeded in wresting away the county seat. With the loss of its official prestige, Belmont gave one last weary sigh and laid down its arms. The miners, the muckers, the judges and juries, the attorneys and litigants, all those who had once thronged the streets and filled the courtroom, vanished like the winds of yesterday. Today, over a century after that last sigh, Belmont stands as a ghost town, a silent sentinel to the boom and bust cycle of the American West. The old courthouse, which listened so briefly to man's trials and tribulations, still stands foursquare to the world, as rugged as the pioneers who built it, as defiant of time as the Nevada clay from which it was made. As we end our journey through the rise and fall of Belmont, we're left with a poignant reminder of the transient nature of human ambition. The town that once dreamed of 10,000 residents now stands empty, its abandoned buildings a playground for the desert wind. Yet, in its decay, Belmont has found a new kind of immortality. As a ghost town, it captures the imagination of visitors from around the world, allowing them to step back in time and touch the raw edge of frontier life. The story of Belmont is more than just a tale of a town that boomed and busted. It's a microcosm of the American West itself, a saga of hope and hardship, of ambition and abandonment. In the end, perhaps the true silver lining of Belmont's story is the window it provides into our shared past, a tangible link to the dreams and struggles of those who came before us. As we leave Belmont behind, its empty streets and crumbling buildings fading in our rearview mirror, we carry with us the echoes of its past, a reminder that even in abandonment, there is history to be preserved and stories to be told. This has been Southwest Desert. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time to Belmont, Nevada, where silver once flowed like water and dreams were as big as the desert sky. Until next time, keep exploring the forgotten corners of history. Welcome to Southwest Desert, where we explore the forgotten stories of the American Southwest. Today, we're diving into the fascinating tale of Unionville, Nevada, a once bustling silver mining town that rose and fell with the dreams of fortune seekers in the 1860s. It's a story of ambition, survival, and the relentless march of progress that would ultimately lead to the town's demise. Let's turn back the clock to 1860. The Comstock lode was the crown jewel of the West. its silver mines drawing fortune seekers from across the country. But as with any gold rush, or in this case, silver rush, timing was everything. In Virginia City, the heart of the Comstock region, many men had arrived just a bit too late to stake their claim on the major bonanzas. These latecomers were desperate for a second chance at fortune, their dreams of wealth still burning bright. That's when the whispers began. Rumors started circulating about rich silver deposits in the Humboldt Range. For a dozen families in the overcrowded Comstock region, these rumors were enough to spark action. They packed their wagons and headed north, establishing a settlement they called Humboldt City. But this was just the prelude to our story. In the spring of 1861, a remarkable prospecting party set out from Humboldt City. The group was led by Captain Hugo Fersdorf and J.C. Hannon, but what made it truly unique was its composition. Alongside these frontier entrepreneurs were 4 Paiute Native Americans and 2 Burros. This diverse band of explorers would change the region's history forever. After a challenging climb to the crest of the Humboldt Range, the party looked down upon a sight that must have made their hearts leap. A canyon blessed with flowing water, stretching eastward into the distance. They named this promising valley Buena Vista, beautiful view in Spanish. But it wasn't just the view that excited them. They discovered rich silver outcroppings in the area. Within days, they were racing back to Humboldt City with news of their discovery. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By July 4, 1861, barely months after the discovery, enough settlers had flooded into the canyon to warrant a proper Independence Day celebration. The frontier spirit was alive and well, and 3 days later the founders made a shrewd move that would accelerate the town's growth. They plotted out the site of what would become Unionville. Now here's where the founders showed their business acumen. They devised an ingenious plan to attract settlers and build infrastructure simultaneously. Every man who contributed 2 days of work on the public road and invested $50 in improving their lot would receive a prime building location absolutely free. It was a 19th century version of sweat equity, and it worked brilliantly. The excitement around Unionville soon caught the attention of the press, particularly the territorial enterprise of Virginia City. In an era when newspaper reporters could transform modest discoveries into legendary bonanzas through the magic of printed words, the Enterprise's mining reporter outdid himself. His report about Unionville stands as perhaps the most optimistic mining assessment ever penned. "I shall express an honest opinion based on a thorough examination," the reporter declared. "Humboldt County is the richest mineral region upon God's footstool. Each mountain range is gorged with the precious ore. The other day, an assay of mere croppings yielded $4,000 to the ton. A week or two ago, an assay of just such surface development made return of $7,000 to the ton. Each day, and almost every hour, reveals new and startling evidence of the profuse and intensified wealth. Have no fears of the mineral resources of Humboldt County. They are incalculable." This glowing report, published before the mines had produced even a single wagon load of ore, sparked a rush. From Salt Lake to San Francisco, the cry rang out, "On to the Humboldt!" Among those who answered this siren call was a young newspaper reporter who would later become one of America's most celebrated authors, 26-year-old Samuel Clemens, better known to history as Mark Twain. In December 1861, Clemens joined A.W. Oliver, the newly appointed probate judge for Humboldt County, and W.H. Claggett, an attorney at law, on a grueling 200-mile journey to Unionville. Their arrival, as Clemens would later recount in his book Roughing It, was far from glamorous. "On the 15th day, we completed our march of 200 miles and entered Unionville, Humboldt County, in the midst of a driving snowstorm. Unionville consisted of 11 cabins and a liberty pole. The rest of the landscape was made up of bleak mountain walls that rose so high into the sky from both sides of the canyon that the village was left, as it were, far down in the bottom of a crevice. The harsh reality of frontier life quickly became apparent to the newcomers. Clemens continued, "We built a small, rude cabin in the side of the crevice and roofed it with canvas, leaving a corner open to serve as a chimney. It was very cold and fuel was scarce." But despite these humble beginnings, Unionville grew at an astonishing pace. By the spring of 1863, just 2 years after its founding, more than 200 cabins dotted the canyon slopes. These weren't your typical frontier structures. The scarcity and high cost of milled lumber forced settlers to be creative. While newspapers quoted dimension stock at $250 to $300 per 1,000 feet, local records show that lumber used in one 2-story house, which still stands today, was ox-freighted to Unionville at the staggering cost of $1 per foot. Most buildings were constructed of log and stone, with roofs thatched in a distinctive old-world style using wild rye grass. The grass was tied in bundles and laid on the roofs, butts down, secured to rafters with rawhide thongs, a perfect example of frontier ingenuity adapting to local conditions. By its second birthday, Unionville had transformed from a handful of cabins into a proper frontier town with an assessed valuation of $187,763, a fortune in those days. The single narrow street that wound for 2 miles through the canyon was lined with an impressive array of businesses. 15 stores, including general mercantiles and meat markets, 2 pharmacies, jewelry stores, 9 saloons and a brewery, 2 hotels, 2 express offices, 4 livery stables, and even a dentist. Perhaps no event better captured the town's growing sophistication than the establishment of its newspaper, the Humboldt Register. On the evening of May 3, 1863, as the first ink-wet copies came off the press, a rifle brigade formed ranks in front of the office and fired a salvo of 9 blasts. By midnight, the new 4-page publication and its editor, W.J. Forbes, had been celebrated with 34 anvil salutes and toasted with gallons of imported champagne. That summer of 1863 saw a continued influx of prospectors and camp followers. From the alkaline flat at the mouth of the canyon to the white crest of the Humboldts, property was being staked at a frenzied pace. The county recorder and 7 deputies were kept busy recording claims, while everyone speculated wildly in feet, as mining shares were then known. Yet beneath this apparent prosperity, Editor Forbes, known for his sharp wit, noticed something concerning. After 2 years of operation, many speculative mining properties hadn't even driven their tunnels deep enough to protect themselves from rain. It was a telling observation that hinted at the somewhat superficial nature of much of the activity. The logistics of supplying this boomtown were impressive. Virtually all outside commodities were freighted from Red Bluff, California, by way of Honey Lake. During the summer of 1863, ox-drawn freight wagons arrived in Unionville at the rate of a dozen or more daily. The scale of these operations was staggering. A single flour mill at Red Bluff shipped 85 tons of flour to Unionville. Freight rates varied from 7 to 14 cents per pound, reflecting the challenging nature of the journey. The town continued to develop its connections to the outside world. In 1864, a tri-weekly pony express was established between Idaho City, Idaho, and Virginia City by way of Unionville. The service delivered Virginia City newspapers from the previous day, helping to reduce the sense of isolation. That same year, telegraph service was established, seemingly cementing Unionville's place in the modern world. But progress can be a double-edged sword. As Unionville fought for better transportation and communication links, it couldn't have known that these very advances would ultimately lead to its downfall. The decisive moment came when the long-awaited Pacific Railroad chose its route and bypassed Unionville completely. Instead, the rails would follow the Humboldt River on the far side of the mountains. This decision gave life to a small settlement called Winnemucca, 50 miles to the north on the Humboldt River. Initially, no one in Unionville paid much attention to this rival town. But with the railroad providing the accessibility that Unionville lacked, Winnemucca began to grow in importance and ambition. What followed was a bitter political struggle that would seal Unionville's fate. Winnemucca launched a campaign to steal the county seat from Unionville. The first attempt failed at the ballot box, but Winnemucca's supporters were persistent. They petitioned the state legislature twice, and on their second attempt they succeeded. Although Unionville appealed to the state Supreme Court, the decision stood. In 1873, county officials packed up their records and moved them to Winnemucca, ending Unionville's 11-year reign as the seat of Humboldt County. This loss of status came at the worst possible time. The town was already reeling from the railroad snub and a devastating fire that had destroyed an entire block of its business district. While the Arizona mine had been a success, producing between $5 and $6 million in silver, the district's other mines had never lived up to the grandiose predictions of those early newspaper reports. When the government's devaluation of silver forced even the profitable Arizona mine to close, Unionville's fate was sealed. Today, Unionville stands as a ghost town, its remaining structures silent witnesses to the boom and bust cycle that defined the American West. Its story is a powerful reminder that progress doesn't always follow the path we expect. The same forces of modernization that Unionville embraced, the railroad, the telegraph, improved transportation, ultimately contributed to its decline. The dream of silver brought people to this narrow canyon, but it was the iron horse, that great symbol of progress, that led them away. In the end, Unionville's tale is not just about silver or settlement or even survival. It's about the unpredictable nature of progress and the eternal human hope that just around the next bend lies a better future. This has been Southwest Desert. Join us next time as we explore another forgotten chapter of the American Southwest. I hope you enjoyed this Southwest Desert journey. If you would like to help support my channel in time, hit the super thanks heart icon on the bottom of the video and contribute. This is very helpful. Also, check out my large catalog of Southwest videos and playlists. Happy trails!